The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of a Nephilim. There is a hidden history which has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of a Nephilim. Today is the first day of September. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. This is part 2 of Tel Gezer. I think you'll find this incredibly interesting. We'll get into that and so much more after a word from our sponsor, Bastyon. Do you remember how Facebook went down in October of 2021, and not just Facebook, but many websites around the world were down for hours? Folks, I remember that. And, you know, that's how we make our living on the net. And when that goes down, you know, people don't buy books and DVDs. And anyway, I digress. That is how easy it is to shut down access to websites. There was another internet outage in Canada just recently where people could not even use debit cards. I remember that also. But internet may still be working. It's the domain names that do not work. This is why you cannot rely only on old school internet websites. You will simply be cut off from information during a societal collapse or an emergency. Thankfully, there is now a social media platform called Bastyon that does not depend on legacy internet. I am active on Bastyon. We just started this, and I ask that you would just go check it out. You'll see it right there. You can see it in front of you. It's under Marzulli. So now you can follow me there. You can download their app through a link below this video. It works like Bitcoin, speaking to computers around the world. So you can never be blocked from seeing me and other bloggers, other people who create content, as long as basic internet is running. Bastyon is anonymous, even has Tor network built in, so there's no need for a VPN. You can just follow me there. Bastyon devs announced that any followers who comments my videos on Bastyon at least twice will get a gift of 2 Pocketcoin automatically on their Bastyon profile. So this is pretty cool. That means, you know, you're earning money. Get the link below and be free from centralized internet. Let me show you how easy it is to register. Once you download the app and install it, select Sign Up. You will simply create a nickname. Mine, of course, is Marzulli. No personal information is required. You can add an avatar to your profile. You will get a special private key, and it's really long, so you want to copy that and put it in your notes. This is your login and password all in one. You have to write down or copy it and put it in notes or whatever, but you have to write down this private key. Don't show it to anyone. It cannot be recovered if lost. So folks, I'm on Bastyon now, just in case the unthinkable happens. We've stopped doing pp&s report, and this is why we have another site, and we're excited about that. And you can just go follow me right over there and never miss another show. So follow me over to Bastyon.com. That's Bastyon.com. So what I'm going to be talking about, and I've got this bad boy on the desk for a reason, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But I think, and I'll talk about Tel Gezer. I'll talk about the book from Stuart McAllister, which I believe is right around 1902, 1908, somewhere in there, but it's over 100 years old. And it's incredible. He did a lot of archaeological work on Tel Gezer. We were there in 2019. If you go back and watch Tuesday's show on Tel Gezer, I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating, because I stood at the standing stones, of course, the altar and all this other stuff. Here's the deal, that there may be a connection between what we see at Tel Gezer, specifically with the Horites, and what happened over in Paracas. How do I know that? It's conjecture. but it's based on some really interesting evidence, and I'll get into that. So this is the book, Bible Sidelights from the Mound of Gezer, Tel Gezer, a record of excavation and discovery. It's by R.A. Stewart McAllister, R.A. Stewart McAllister, with illustrations, and it's a PDF. But before I get into that, I would like to thank Expedition Bible, specifically Joel Kramer, Where God Came Down, the archaeological evidence. He has a show on YouTube. Someone sent it to me, Expedition Bible, and it was the archaeologist Joel Kramer that pointed me in this direction. I was there at Tel Gezer, as I said, in 2019, but I wasn't aware of McAllister's book. And so I got the PDF, and I want to thank Daniel Wright also, who sent over the link to the PDF. So it was great. Look, and here's the deal. Unlike a lot of people in so-called Christian circles, I make it a point. I go, and I'm not patting myself on the back, even though it seems that way, but I'm bringing up something that should be standard operating procedure in the Christian community, and it's not. If I have some research from someone, like if I'm talking about Genesis 3:15, I immediately point back to Gary Stearman, elder brother. Why? Because it was Gary Stearman's presentation at a Nephilim Mounds conference several years ago that illuminated that passage for all of us. Russ Dizdar, Chief Joseph Riverwind, and myself. All the other speakers who were there. We were blown away by Gary's presentation. It's all about the seed. For me, it was the sort of the missing link in the whole puzzle. And once I got behind Genesis 3:15, wow, it cemented Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's work, G.H. Pember's work, and others. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the fallen angels took wives from whoever they wish. And of course, that's our book, Countermove. But once again, I digress. But I really believe strongly in pointing back to people that we're getting information from. So what's wrong with giving a shout out to Joel Kramer? There's this book. I would suggest you check it out, Where God Came From. And the video on YouTube is fantastic, Expedition Bible. So, because of Joel's work, I'm kind of standing on his work. Even though I was at Tel Gezer in 2019, he's gotten in some really cool stuff, and we're going to be talking about that. So the next thing, this is from McAllister's work, Bible Sidelights, you can see it. Gezer, its site and history. When the land was divided among the tribes, Gezer was allotted to the Levites, dwelling in the tribe of Ephraim. But as was the case in several strong cities of Palestine, the conquest was partial only. So, get this out. Check this out. The Ephraimites drove not out the Canaanites that dwell in Gezer. Chedorlaomer smote the Horites, and that's what I want to talk about today, in their Mount Seir. The Horites also dwelt in Seir aforetime, but the children of Esau succeeded them, as he did for the children of Esau which dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Horites from before them. No light upon them. The only fact, in other words, we're not sure about the Horites, what they were, where they come from, where they went to. The only fact that we can learn about them is derived from their name, which is supposed to mean cave dwellers, and which thus gives a hint as to the level of their civilization. Another passage. What they unearthed at Gezer were the skeletons, a small but muscular people. It is curious in this connection that in Deuteronomy, they seem contrasted with the Emim and the Anakim, who were counted Rephaim or giants. Now, this is my wheelhouse, and when I saw this, I about fell out of my chair, and I'll get to that. The passage appears almost to imply that the Horites were not included under this classification. Certainly, the Aborigines of Gezer were not giants, but get this. In my opinion, the Horites were Nephilim. Why? And I'll tell you, because I believe the enemy, the dragon, is messing with the genome. He's trying to create man in his own image, and this is why we have different names, like the Anakim, like the Horites, like the Rephaim, like the Nephilim. In some cases, like the Zanzumim, the buzzing ones, it seems to denote genetic characteristics. Can I prove that? No, because we don't have the skeletons. It's all been, hustled away. But what What I can say is that there's an interesting link between what we see in the archaeological evidence, that these were not giants. I'd love to see the skeletons that he dug up, but there's no pictures of them. There's pictures of sacrificed girls, and we'll get to that, but none of the inhabitants, supposedly. Okay, moving right along. They created these caves, and they had irregular chambers in the caves, groups of chambers, 2 or 3 in number connected by narrow doors, from 12 to 30 feet more or less across. Usually, they were entered by a door in the roof from which a rock-cut flight of steps led down to the floor of the cave. So here's a shot of Tel Gezer, circa 1902. It's just been recently excavated. You can see the standing stones that are there. Again, go back and watch our show from Tuesday. You can see the drone footage. I'm talking in front of the altar, all sorts of cool stuff. There's the altar. And in my opinion, it was definitely filled with blood. This was a cross-section. This woman, this girl, was sacrificed and she was cut in half. They took a saw and sawed her in half. And then, of course, on the bottom, we see an infant buried in a jar. This is disgusting stuff. Disgusting stuff. And this is the abomination. This is the sin of the Amorites. And I differ slightly with Joel. We're not all Amorites. I'm not a Nephilim. Most of you out there, or all of you out there, are not Nephilim either. Are there hybrids walking among us? That's another show. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. But yes, there are. Absolutely there are. And we talked about that on yesterday's UFO update. Check that out. Shapeshifter. I think you'll find that interesting. But here's the deal. We see sacrifices, we see abominations. The sin of the Amorites. The Amorites, here it is. I'm not an Amorite, you're not an Amorite. But what I think the Lord is telling Abraham way, way back when he says, Abraham, you'll become a great nation, but you'll go down to Egypt for 400 years until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness. That's the God of the Bible allows this to go on for a period of time, and then he just puts a stop to it. I believe the Horites were Nephilim. I believe the Anakim are Nephilim. Okay, the Zamzumim, the Emims, they're all Nephilim tribes. And they're positioned in the Levant, in the Holy Land, for a reason. I get into that in my book, The Cosmic Chess Match. So here we go. There's a shot of it. Absolutely disgusting. So I was there. Now I'm going to switch. I'm going to go from Israel, from the Levant, clear over to Paracas, Peru. We were granted access. I was there with Timothy Alberino and Tim's film crew. Chase Klotsky was also joined us, as others did. It was an amazing down there for a week. And Tim's archaeologist was able to get us into the reserve. The public is not allowed in the reserve. That's number one. So there's a gate there, but of course there's a million ways around that. But if you're caught, you gotta, anyway, you gotta backsheesh and pay the guard, and we didn't do that. We were allowed access, legal access, because we had a tenured archaeologist working for the Peruvian people that got us in. So we took the film crew, we're there. Here's a shot of it. You can see that it's an absolute wasteland. Nothing grows. There's no rain there. Less than 1/4 of an inch a year. You can't grow doodly squat. There's the beautiful Pacific. And this, my friends, is one of the locations of a collapsed structure that the elongated skull people in Paracas created for themselves. This is all that's left of it. You can see right in the middle there, that mound, this is what they created. And they used whalebone and sealskin, and then it went down. And there was a door. There was like a little door about this big, like 2 foot by 2 foot. And down it went. And the archaeologist talked to us about this. Now, I don't have it on film because Tim was filming, but the archaeologist who was there talked about this. They lived underground. Get this. I asked him specifically, well, when you excavated these areas, did you find evidence of torchlight? No, we found no evidence of torchlight. They could see in the dark. Conjecture, possibly, but they could see in the dark. Check this out. Here's another shot. Always good to get perspective. There's a gentleman, standing, And you can see the absolute wasteland all around the Paracas Reserve. And yet it was inhabited by peoples about 3,000 years ago. This is one of the huts that were constructed by the fishermen. It's modern, but directly next to that, and I do not have a picture of it, unfortunately, directly next to that was the door, and it was completely covered with sand. And the guys, the fishermen that were there, uncovered it for us, and we could see it was like a door, a shaft that went straight down. So the reason why I bring this up, here's another shot of just you can really see how absolutely desolate it is, and yet there's the Pacific. Now you go back 3,000 years ago, before the climate changed there, and it did change. Apparently, there's evidence that it was a green belt. But here's the question: if it's so beautiful, why are these entities digging down into the ground? Why are they doing this? The climate on Paracas is about 80 degrees every day, and you get this incredible ocean breeze, the trade winds coming in every single day. It's beautiful. I actually thought about moving there at one point. It's beautiful, but the Peruvian people and the way the government is, no thank you. I'm an American and I'm glad to be here. But the terrain and the climate and the beauty of the Pacific Ocean is absolutely incredible. There's another shot. Who wouldn't want a beach house there, right? Pretty amazing, huh? So there I am, very happy to be there. So folks, what I want to show you here is a model of one of the skulls from Paracas, created by Joe Taylor, the Mount Blanco Museum. You can see it right here. I want to point out a couple of things here. First, notice the orbits of the eyes. They're 25 to 30% larger. How do I know this? We had an optometrist in our film, number 7, Lost Civilizations. And in this, Jeff Duff, the optometrist, states right on the record that this guy, the orbits are 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. That's telling. Also, the pupillary distance is about 45 millimeters. It should be about 65 as a normal human being. Between my pupil here and my pupil here, it's about 65 millimeters. I mean, give or take a few, but not 40 to 45, which is what we see here. Thus, this entity more than likely was able to see in the dark. It had night vision. Is this the remnant of the Horites? You tell me. And I find it interesting that the DNA showed, our DNA evidence showed us completely, and that's number 6 right there, that a lot of these came from the Levant, Eastern Europe, the Black Sea. Well, Tel Gezer is in northern Israel, right? There it is. And what are we looking at here? Once again, there could be a connection between what we see in the Levant and what we have happening in Peru. Now, and I get that. People, well, there's no evidence of that. Wait a minute. This isn't cranial. This is not the result of cranial deformation. How do I know that? There's the foramen magnum right here. Okay? It's all the way pushed back to the occipital plate. If it's any further back, it's outside the skull. It's outside the skull. These are genetic anomalies. And in our film on the DNA on these guys, we've got medical professionals, doctors, surgeons, everybody else coming on the record, telling us that what we're looking at is something genetic. And this goes back into Genesis 3:15, which states that the seed of the dragon will be at war, at enmity with the seed of the serpent. I'll say it again. Genesis 3:15, Jesus is in the garden, Adam and Eve are over here, the dragon's over there. Jesus says, I'm declaring war between your seed, your offspring, and the offspring of the woman. The proto-evangelium, the one who will come from the seed, the offspring of the woman, will crush your head. Of course, that's Jesus. That's what Calvary is all about. But you will bruise his heel. Folks, that sets up the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. It is, as Gary Stearman used to say, it is a seed war between the offspring of the dragon and the offspring of the woman. That is what is going on. And we need to wake up to the fact that these tribes may have literally migrated. Why? Because as Joshua and Caleb pressed the conquest of the Levant, We know that the Nephilim tribes fled. Not all of them, but many of them did. That's our conjecture. And I would love to see if there are any pictures from Tel Gezer of the actual skeletons that McAllister dug up. To the best of my knowledge, there has to be some. He took pictures, but we don't know. We don't know. We see the sacrifice, and who's doing that? And why are they doing that? It's all about the blood. It's always about the blood. And we see this over and over and over again in many of the ancient sites from the Levant clear down to Peru. In fact, just recently in Peru, they discovered this horrible, horrific scene where hundreds of children were ritualistically sacrificed. We see it with the Aztecs. We see it with the Mayan. It's literally everywhere. We see it in places like Chaco Canyon, where cannibalism and human sacrifice was also conducted. But of course, you can't talk about that because it's politically incorrect. But it happened there. Do the research. It absolutely happened. In the stone table at America's Stonehenge, what do we see? The groove in that table to collect the blood. It's all about the blood. It's always about human sacrifice. Always, always, always. Is there a connection between the Nephilim tribes? Could these be the Horites that migrated from the Levant, from Tel Gezer, way over to Peru? It's a possibility. Why? Because our DNA proves that the origin of these people did not originate from the Bering Land Bridge. They're not B1. They're not Amerindians. They're not. They originated someplace else. And I've said this before, but that stele on the coast of North Africa, and hats off to Mondo Gonzalez who pointed this out to me, that stele in North Africa, which is found by Procopius, stated, "We are they who fled from the face of Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun." What's that doing there? What is that doing there? They fled. They left. And they set up shop all the way. There's this western expansion, and that's what we see. We see the megalithic, we see the ritualistic sacrifices, all the same stuff. When you get to the island of Gozo, you can't take pictures in the Hypogeum, right? In Malta. Gozo's right next door with huge megaliths. And I've been there, but I haven't done anything with the film yet. But once again, I digress. When you go to Malta and you go into the Hypogeum, you're not allowed to take any pictures. Oh, no, 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 no. And I think the book that we had burnt in the fire, which is really unfortunate. But when you go to the Hypogeum and you read originally what was discovered at the entrance, this whole thing was covered up, completely covered up. When they broke in, there were all these skulls and skeletons in complete disarray. A mass grave human sacrifice, in my opinion. There were elongated skulls that were found there too. But of course, all that's swept under the rug. It's all swept under the rug. Is there a connection between what happened in the Levant with the Horites? Because they're not giants. They're not giants. Because the dragon is trying to create man in his own image. I believe this is a Nephilim, and I can't prove this, but if I were to just to state, well, LA, what do you think this is? I think we are looking at the remains of the Horites. Why? Because the DNA points to a Middle Eastern connection. No doubt about that. And the eyes, the orbits of the eyes, are 25 to 30% larger than a human being, giving these entities night vision. And we know that on the shores of Paracas, right, there were these underground dwelling places. Underground dwelling places. These were not indigenous Amerindians. Sorry, they weren't. They came from someplace else. And that's why we're on the trail. Thanks so much for watching, folks. Remember, you can go to Uscreen and download all 7 of them. That's streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Number 8 is in the works. It's just myself and Gil and John Adam trying to get these shows out, and we're working on the UFO film, number 3, which should be out fairly soon. Gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We are on the trail of the Nephilim. Don't forget you can watch 1 and 2 for free. Open up the text box down below. Just open it up, scroll down a little bit. Here's a link to the free film. Number 3, which is right there, will not be free. Close Encounters. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, there is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. And that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim.